Let's continue this discussion and analysis of these results with our U.S. guest now, our special panel from the United States. Joining us in Washington, D.C., Adolfo Franco, who's a Republican strategist and was an advisor to Senator John McCain. Also in Washington, D.C., LaFranza Butler, who's a former senior advisor to Kamala Harris for the People. She's currently a partner for SCRB, which strategies, and joins us from Los Angeles, I should say, not Washington, D.C., but also in D.C. with us, Jennifer Victor, professor of political science at George Mason University. Thank you very much for being with us, all of you. LaFranza, let me start with you in Los Angeles. A big night for Joe Biden, no doubt. The consolidation by the Democratic Party around him seems to have helped a lot.
No doubt that the unity around Vice President Biden has helped him incredibly. I think most important part of it, though, started with the incredible turnout of the African-American community in South Carolina, giving him such a big boost. The endorsement of Representative Clyburn, I think, was critical to that. And the vice president left South Carolina demonstrating that he could put together that Obama coalition from 2008 and 2012. And I think, and then those endorsements started rolling. And coming into California, while the vice president has not campaigned a lot personally himself in the state, he has had a number of his surrogates in the state. He has gotten the endorsement of a number of California statewide leaders and local leaders. And so tonight's going to be a very exciting night in California for the vice president, but also no one should count out Senator Sanders in the state as well.
Jennifer Victor, your thoughts? I mean, Joe Biden says America is hungry to be united and that most of the people, most Democrats, don't want the promise of a revolution that Bernie Sanders is making. Do you agree with that? Do you think, this is a Biden race now?
Well, that remains to be seen to some extent. But when all the dust is settled here at the end of Super Tuesday, it's looking to me very much like 2020 is going to feel pretty similar to what 2016 felt like, in which you had one sort of moderate lane Democrat. Back then it was Hillary Clinton. Now looks like it's going to be Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders, who is Bernie Sanders in both of those cases. And they're going to battle it out until the end. In 2016, Hillary Clinton obviously prevailed, and so that's to the extent that Biden is using some evidence that that portion of the party is larger. That might be part of his case. On the other hand, Sanders has been growing this movement, as it were, for quite some time now, and is trying to make a play for it.
Yeah, and Sanders remains quite defiant. Do you think Biden, though, can sustain this momentum until the convention? I mean, there's still looming questions about him, his propensities for gaffes, the moments where he searches for words. He's also spending least on ads compared to Bernie Sanders. He has one of the smallest organizations compared to Sanders. Do you think this momentum from the victories in South Carolina and North Carolina will keep going until the convention?
Well, certainly, his campaign was struggling. He didn't perform all that well over the first couple of contests with Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, but then performed well in South Carolina. But that was just 3 days ago. I know it feels longer ago than that. A lot of political time has passed since then. But essentially, he hasn't had enough time to have turned his success into a dominant campaign. So many of the successes that we're seeing him have tonight aren't on account of his ground campaign or his fundraising prowess or anything like that. It's because he got endorsements from key players like Amy Klobuchar that helped him win Minnesota. And so what we're seeing is, can he have that momentum? Probably. I mean, he's going to have to put a little bit more proof into the pudding as we go along here. But I don't think there's any reason to think he can't pull off what Sanders is pulling off.
Right.
To your previous question about, I lost my train of thought. Your previous question was?
I lost my train of thought too, because there were quite a few questions in there. Listen, we'll come back to it, okay? I want to bring in Adolfo Franco to the conversation. But Adolfo, before I ask you what you think of these results and, you know, where we're headed with the Democrats, I just want to show our viewers some of what President Trump has been tweeting about these results. Reacting first to Mike Bloomberg's performance in the primaries, he said, the biggest loser tonight by far is mini Mike Bloomberg. His political consultants took him for a ride, $700 million washed down the drain, and he got nothing for it but the nickname Mini Mike and the complete destruction of his reputation. Way to go, Mike. The president also tweeted about Elizabeth Warren's performance, Elizabeth Warren losing her home state of Massachusetts. He said, Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, other than Mini Mike, was the loser of the night. She didn't even come close to winning her home states of Massachusetts. Well, now she can just sit back with her husband and have a nice cold beer. Adolfo, not what we expect from a U.S. president.
Well, you expect it from Donald Trump. I think this is vintage President Trump. I actually think he's right. I think the two losers tonight are definitely Michael Bloomberg and Elizabeth Warren. There's no question about it. In fact, I believe Mr. Bloomberg has said that his campaign, or he will make a statement tomorrow on the race that probably means he's either changing his strategy or not moving forward. But the president has always commented on his opponents in this way. I think it's vintage, is to be expected.
Yeah, but it's still very hard to get used to, you know, especially for our international audience. Still very hard to get used to, you know, this type of language and this type of tone from the American president.
Well, but I think, unfortunately, in our entire political discourse in this country, we've been moving in this direction for some time, and I think it's unfortunate in many ways that that's the case, but that's been the direction. I don't think at this stage, though, with all due respect, that those types of tweets are anything that the American people right now expect anything differently for the president. I think they would be somewhat surprised if the president's style would change.
Right.
He's the genuine Donald Trump in that regard.
So what is going to be his strategy going forward? And which of these two candidates that are in the lead right now among the Democrats, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, who would he like to be against?
You know, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I think it's pretty clear after tonight, unless something dramatically changes, that it is a two-person race moving forward. I can't see something other than that. I believe that the president sees strengths and weaknesses in both of the candidates. There's no question that Senator Sanders has a very enthusiastic following. I think they're committed Sanders people. They only believe in Mr. Sanders. They're completely committed to a revolution. That's the words that Senator Sanders has used. And of course, Joe Biden is, to many of us, the past. He is, as you mentioned, prone to gaffes and mistakes. I agree with Jennifer here. There's a long way to go in this race. 3 or 4 days ago, this was Mr. Sanders to lose, and that was the momentum. So tonight is the big Joe Biden night. There's no question. But this could all change for a number of reasons between now and the convention.
Right.
For a number of reasons, it can change. But to answer your question very directly, I think they both are equally, from the standpoint of the president, beatable. I think the president will be running on his record, and I don't think it matters on the alternatives. I think Mr. Sanders' prescriptions are much more extreme. There's no question about that. And I think that in that regard, it probably would be easier to draw that distinction. But Joe Biden, even for the Democrats, is just not an enthusiastic candidate. I can't see people, frankly, having the same degree of enthusiasm for Biden as they did for President Obama, although he was his vice president.
All right. Lafonza, your thoughts on that? Does it make a difference who takes on Donald Trump, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden?
Look, I think the Democratic Party it's either going to be, at this point, I agree with the comments made before, it's either going to be, it looks like after tonight, Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders, or Vice President Biden. I think both of them are prepared to take on President Trump and debate around the issues that impact the American people, whether it's the state of our economy, the health care that is being, that if so many people left behind, exorbitant pharmaceutical costs, impact of housing and housing affordability. There's so many issues that are impacting American people today. And I think either Vice President Biden or Senator Sanders are ready to take on President Trump and have that debate. Now, I think that it's going to really come down to states like Michigan and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, states like Florida. I think there is some idea that Vice President Biden can actually bring more of the Obama coalition together than Senator Sanders. But, you know, Senator Sanders has, the entire time he's been running, he has said that his intention is to put together the largest grassroots movement ever seen in the history by engaging a multi-generational, I believe he also says multiracial coalition. And I think tonight is showing us that there may be some flaws in that theory. And that we're seeing some pretty historic turnout in states that are being won by Vice President Biden.
Yeah.
And so I think the Democratic Party and all of its allies are ready to put forward a good, strong debate for the American vote and for the American people.
But Jennifer, a lot of people would argue that until now, Democrats have been looking for a candidate who can defeat Trump rather than, you know, one who agrees with them on the issues. What are your thoughts, you know, regarding who between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden can actually stand a chance against Donald Trump in November?
No, I completely agree with you, Sully. I think that what the Democrats are trying to do in 2020 is recreate what they did in the 2018 midterm election, which was essentially capitalize on a very strong anti-Trump component in the political electorate in the United States right now. Worked for them strongly in the congressional elections in 2018, but now they're looking at this national election. And in the Sanders versus Biden contest, I think there's a couple of ways to think about it. On the one hand, you've got Sanders supporters tend to be really loyal, might be the really polite way to put it. And if Biden turns out to be the nominee, I'm not so sure that all of those Sanders supporters are going to, you know, do that thing that some Democrats are saying now, vote for blue no matter who. Some of the Sanders supporters, I think, will be so upset that their candidate lost that they would stay home. On the other hand, you know, Biden is making the argument that his coalition is larger than the Sanders coalition, and so maybe they can win without them. That will remain to be seen. We'll have to see if that's true. If Sanders turns out to be the nominee, on the other hand, you know, I think some of those Biden supporters will sit home and not support Sanders, but a bunch of them will. A bunch of them will follow that, will vote for whoever the Democrat is in that anti-Trump kind of coalition building strategy. So both Sanders and Biden, I think, have slightly different arguments to make in how that general election strategy coalition building would work for them.
Thank you so much for your thoughts, Jennifer, Victor, LaFonza, Butler, Adolfo Franco. Thank you very much for bringing us your reaction there to these